Hey guys, welcome back to Seller Sessions. I'll be handing over the show here on Mondays. Just bring up my notes. I'm not going to take up too much time because I want to hand this over to Belle. So I need to step back and work on a big project next year. So when I looked around the industry, I need to find someone that's relentless and consistent. The thing is with podcasting, like barely a week goes past and someone's asking me, what does it take to make a successful podcast? I always say to them, content comes first, respect your audience. And on top of that is consistency. Most podcasts barely get past maybe 50 episodes or so. Next month, December the 18th, I think the date is, we're going to hit 600 episodes. So through peak COVID, I did 77 days in a row. Many times, again, it's about commitment, right? You run businesses and everything else. There are days I didn't want to do it, but I committed myself, and I do the same with everything across the businesses. This is what I see in Belle. So we've decided to do a 12-week weeks to kick off as a residency, and we've agreed if I'm happy, Belle is happy, and the audience is happy, then it's going to be a win-win all round. Belle will also be one of the lead hosts for Branded by Women too. This is going to kick off in February with 40 speakers signed up for that. 70% of them are new faces this time around. We want to bring the new breed through, and we're also going to have a breakthrough section. So there's going to be a section where we can chart the growth of these exceptional women for the following year. Again, as this falls under Seller Sessions, Belle will not be able to participate in Seller Poll 2021 under our guidelines. Belle, welcome to Seller Sessions. What do you have coming up over the next 12 weeks?
Thank you so much, Danny, first of all, for having me as a co-host. When you first told me about it, I was very shook and surprised and honored because as we spoke before, there's so many talented people in our industry. And, you know, having me being here with you, it's just such a pleasure. Only, I get to learn so much from you on a daily basis from all your podcasts. So for me to be here with you, it's an absolute honor. So thank you. And for the next 12 weeks, I will be bringing in guests that I admire, that I know maybe for a long time or even for a short period of time that actually inspired me. And I think it's very important to showcase to those listeners who come in every single day and watch your shows and listen to them. I think it's such a good opportunity to get to know a different kind of people that most people won't come across on a daily basis.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, for next year, one of my goals is I want to help bring through the next breed as well. So next year, everyone we come on the show is amazing, but I want to try and source some new fresh blood, as we call it, new people coming through. So I would like to next year, because the thing is, we've got to 600 episodes nearly, right? You can't keep doing the same stuff over and over again. Now, if this partnership works out with you doing the Mondays, this then becomes more like a network. I want the podcast to be out there as much as possible with some of the best content that can be brought in to the platform for the audience. So we might get a surprise in the future that might be other guest hosts. So Seller Sessions podcast becomes a network. I will still be intrinsically involved at doing at least 2 to 3 shows a week. In the UK, we're going back into lockdown. We don't know how the lockdown is going to be, but at the end of the day, if people have got content out there that they can check out, but most importantly, you have to make progress. And this is part of the growth of the platform. And so welcome to the show. I'm not going to take up any more of your time. I'm going to bring in Cortney now and leave you guys to take over.
Hi.
So I'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Hi, Cortney.
Hi. It's so great to be here.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to have you on the show. Cortney, we know each other for what? Almost a year now?
Yep. Yes, January, actually, of last year.
Yeah, and we, it was just by pure luck on my part that I was in Los Angeles at this, what was that, acting class, yes?
Yes.
And it's not something I do ever. And I had a friend that told me, Rich, by the way, hi, Rich, if you're listening, he told me, there's this class coming up. I think you would like it, but I had no information on it. Absolutely zero. I just trusted him because he's a good friend. And I said, why not? I'll show up. And the best thing that happened to me that weekend was meeting you, Cortney, because you have really helped me change a lot in my life. And for those that don't know, Cortney is my mentor. She's been mentoring me for, again, almost a year now. And every time after our session, I'm just so filled with gratitude and inspiration and everything else. So I wanted you to be my first guest because I think people will absolutely love you.
Thank you. I'm so honored by all of that, and it was such a gift. It was a very serendipitous gift that we got, and I feel honored and privileged to be here with you. So thanks for having me.
You are so sweet, Cortney. Every time I have you once a week, usually, and every time I look forward to it. So when time came, I'm like, okay, I can have Cortney a few more days to share, not only with the world but with me, because every time I meet with you, I just feel so empowered, really. And I think a lot of us, especially in this industry that we're in, that we're in e-commerce, we're very competitive, and but a lot of us also lack confidence. And I think you are the perfect person to talk about that, because you have, I'm sure you have struggled and you have surpassed, a lot of issues in life. And I think you have a lot to talk about on confidence.
Well, first of all, it is a mutual admiration society. I am beyond inspired by you. I love the fact that we're getting extra time together. And yes, of course, in my work, I've worked a lot on confidence, especially surprisingly, with really, really powerful women like yourself. And I see this all over the place as women not maybe able to fully step into their power. And we can call that confidence, because I actually think it's one of those things that we're all kind of itching for, because we think we can scratch it by looking externally. The myth in our society is that confidence comes from the next paycheck, it comes from the next promotion, it comes from the nice car or the big house or the husband or the family, whatever. Confidence comes from external factors, and once you have those, then you're entitled to feel confident. But the fact of the matter is, confidence, which comes from confidere, means with trust. It means to trust within. And so it's actually sourced from within you, right? And so again, unfortunately, we're sort of looking outside, sort of who's got my answers, but you've got your answers. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from the kind of work that I do is finding those answers, learning how to source those answers from within you. And again, it goes kind of against the grain of what we're taught in society, but it's ultimately where we do get that, where we get our juice from, where we're able to, really move forward on what it is that's important to us.
Do you think women and men are kind of equal when it comes to confidence? Do you feel like men are a lot more confident, or is that just an impression that we have?
I think that's a fabulous question. I think society tends to sort of put this stamp on men that they're supposed to show that they're strong and they're tough and all of that. And I think when you crack through that exterior, there are a lot of men as well have a lot of issues, but it's a lot harder for them to maybe even necessarily see them, because it's sort of seen as something they're not even allowed a lot of times to struggle with. Whereas women, I guess, sort of have permission in a way. We're seen as sort of softer sometimes, but the reality is, of course, we're all dealing with it, I think, in different ways, and it manifests itself differently in terms of how it affects our work and things like that. I do tend to see that women we have the tendency to kind of look at all the pieces on the board, whereas I think men have the tendency to kind of more directly go where they might need to. So I often joke that if you tell a man to get to A to Z, he will move directly from the letter A to the letter Z, whereas women oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes, we're considering the rest of the alphabet. So we've got to get through the whole alphabet. We have to have a clear picture. And this can happen pretty quickly too, because women are really good at getting a clear picture and a kind of a whole tend to take a more of a holistic approach. And so that's kind of one of the biggest differences I see also in terms of confidence, whereas a man can just say, okay, buck up, you've got to kind of start to do this, whereas a woman's sort of thinking about all these different factors at play, if that makes sense.
Do you think it's our DNA, or do you think it's the way we were raised as kids? Do you think boys are pushed more towards like you fall, get up, and quickly just get over it, whereas girls were more like cuddled? And do you think that has anything to do with how we're raised?
Possibly, yes. I think there's probably a bit of nature and nurture involved. And I think that it's maybe what's more important of understanding, because oftentimes I feel like people want to analyze where things come from or where the problem arises. But I think it can be more helpful at times to just look at, okay, this is the result I'm getting. So if this is the result I'm getting, regardless of where it came from, whether it came from parenting, whether it came from school, whether it came from a lack of school or too much school or whatever, we can always try to overanalyze what the past has been, or we can just look at right now, okay, these are the results I'm getting. I'm not feeling as confident in this area of my life. I don't have as much trust in myself. Hence, what do I do with that information? I think that's probably the more important thing for us to look at,
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. I mean, especially in the business that I'm in, I meet a lot of people, and a lot of people want to put on the front that they're very confident. And trust me, Cortney, I have done this a lot in the past. Yeah. And, in the process of me doing this, I realized, well, let me back it up a little bit. So, most people know I was born in Romania, very poor, I am very thankful for that experience, by the way. I wasn't brought up with money, which made me become a little bit more concentrated on success and on confidence. But it's almost like the confidence and the success have to come together. It's almost impossible to separate the two. So, for me to be successful, I had to step into that confidence, and I had none. First of all, I was the girl. I had no English when I first came to US. I kept looking at all these buildings and all these people dressed in their suit, and I could imagine saying like, oh my God, I would love one day to wear a suit and walk into an office. Like the feeling of that, it was just like, I could put myself into those shoes for just a second and imagine. So by doing that, I said, what is in my power that I can do? And obviously I had no money to get a nice suit to do that. But what I did have was the possibility. It was my thinking that I could. So I put myself into that position of like, okay, I am confident, I am powerful. And even though it went against what I was thinking at the time, I still stepped in it and faked it. A lot of people say fake it till you make it. I literally did just that. I would look in a mirror and I say, I am powerful and I'm strong. And it sounded so stupid. And it was like the worst thing. It's like very painful to do it if you've never done it. First start doing that, it's like, oh my God, this is so stupid. What am I doing? But then the more you do this, it's almost you're tricking your brain to believe that you are successful, that you are confident. And the more you do, just like with any habit, if you wake up every single morning, you go to the gym, eventually you will start seeing results. You may not see results right away, but eventually you're going to have that body that you want. So for me, it worked almost like that. I mean, I'm not saying I'm fully trained now because we're never really fully there. It's still a work in process. And, I have to give myself confidence. I tried so many times to look outside myself and look at other people and how they do it. And it's great. It's inspiring. But the confidence, it really has to come, just like you said, within you. It's very hard to steal that from anybody. You actually have to train yourself in being confident. Of course, you can always get better at, studying or learning a trade or learning a business. And with that will also come confidence. But you have to really accept yourself from within, accept that you can be confident. And, that's really what my journey with confidence has been. And I know a lot of people struggle with that. And because of that, it makes them maybe not take some steps in life that would get them to the place that they need to be. So if you're just starting an Amazon business right now and you're like, well, I don't think I can do this, because they see all these people on the screen, saying, oh, I make 7 figures and 8 figures and 9. And then a lot of people tend to feel so small, like, I don't think I'll ever do this. How do I get to do that? So, maybe you can shed some light on how does somebody who's starting out right now get to a little bit of a confidence to know that it's possible, that they can succeed.
Well, first of all, I just want to say, wow, your story, every time I hear your story, I'm just, I want to do this every time. And I think probably most people who hear your story, and I as well, I didn't have the connections. I didn't have the silver spoon or the gold spoon or whatever spoon. I didn't have the spoon. And I think it's really important for people to realize that we didn't just start out this way, because I think lots of times people will look at someone like you and they'll think, oh, well, she just had it made. It was easy for her. And I think it's really important to kind of debunk that the way you just did, and to just talk a little bit about your origins and talk a little bit about the struggle of getting to the hero's journey, really essentially of getting to where you are, because again, that's oftentimes really overlooked. And then it becomes, for other people, it seems so far away, like you said. So I want to unpack a little bit of what you just talked about in your own story, because I think it's a great example of how people can start to source that from within right now. Because the fact of the matter is that when you were imagining yourself in that suit, okay, and you were imagining yourself walking in there, there's something happening in your body. You were actually having a biochemical reaction to the different neuropeptides that you were sending down within, your system and all of that. So on a very scientific level, you were actually changing your chemistry as you were imagining. And it's funny, because if you look at even certain scientists, even Einstein talked about the power of imagination, and he talked about imagination being essentially infinitely more powerful than the rational mind. And yet we've created a society that tends to value the rational mind and disvalue the imagination. But if you think about the word imagine itself, if you break it apart, if you can use it a little bit differently, and you think of it as image in, you were imaging in your future. And so you were sourcing from within. And the more you allowed yourself to connect to the emotion of that, the greater the probability outcome became. In other words, we are living basically in a sea of infinite potentiality, right? So anything is essentially available to you. And what your possibility is, what you get to play around with is, what am I going to entertain? What am I going to use my imagination on? What do I want to decide to consciously image in? Because the other thing that you mentioned was, you get up every day and you talk yourself into this. And you the way you were talking about it was one of the ways that I teach, which is you are essentially brainwashing yourself. Which, by the way, we're doing all the time anyway. The only difference is you decided to do it consciously. And that's a huge difference, because most people are just brainwashing themselves, and I should say they're not even brainwashing themselves, they're allowing it to happen. And I talk about this a lot, because it's the difference between being on default and the difference and designing or deciding or choosing. Okay, so there's a default setting, and that is basically, we have a thought impulse. And with all of the discoveries we've made in neuroscience, we still don't know the origin of thought. So we don't know where these thought impulses come from, but we have a thought impulse. Now, in that moment, when you're having a thought impulse and maybe even attaching an emotion to it straight away, you have a choice in that moment, whether you're going to continue to entertain that and allow it to sort of snowball, or whether you're going to consciously direct your attention into something else, or you're going to consciously decide to reinforce that thought impulse. Because some of our thought impulses are great. People might think, I'm a fabulous mom. That's a fantastic thought impulse. That's something that you can take and you can feel into the emotion of it, and you can feel yourself holding your child, and you can, all these other things. And then at the same time, that same individual might have the thought impulse, I'm not good with money. I'm not good with numbers. I can't start a business. I'm not this, I'm not that. Essentially just brainwashing themselves towards something that they might not necessarily want. And so the choice comes when you say, I really want that thing. And you don't have to be, it's not like an attached kind of want where you're almost like, I joke sometimes talking about, if a kid is stomping their feet and telling you, I want ice cream right now, you're probably not going to give that child an ice cream. But if the child says, that would be really, really wonderful, you're going to be the first to say, let's do it, babe, So the universe kind of functions, or however you want to call it, the non-conscious or the super conscious or this realm of infinite potentiality that I was mentioning a moment ago, works in the very same way. And so some of what you talked about are actually great ways to start to answer your question. Of course, there are many others, and if you want, we can keep going in that vein, but I want to highlight, you just gave a perfect story of how this works. And so anyone really wanting to do it can just start taking those little baby steps. We can also talk a little bit more about why I say baby steps if you want, but I'm going to let you take it from here and tell me what direction you want to go in.
Yeah, so no, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was the subject we talked our last session, how we're brainwashing ourselves in. A lot of people, friends or family, they'll come and ask me like, wow, like, you're successful now. Like, how did you get there? And I was never really able to pinpoint where that success came from. I just, you almost always want to play it off like, oh, maybe I was just lucky, or maybe, maybe something happened in the course of my life where my luck changed or whatever. But when we discussed last time, it made me realize that how powerful our thoughts and our feelings are together. So it's not only having the thought of like, okay, I'm thinking of, becoming a millionaire, and like what is it called? The law of attraction. It's fantastic. I love it. It's the fact that you're thinking about it. Okay, I want to be a millionaire, but also attaching that feeling like, what would it feel like to be in that position? And I think that was really the secret. Because a lot of people say, well, I can wish for, to become the president of the United States tomorrow. It's not going to happen. But what if you put some feelings behind it, some emotions, actually visualize and step into being the president, like really feel what it would be like in the day of. And we can do this in business and in really anything. And I tend to do this a lot before going into a business meeting. That's very important for me. I would sit for a few seconds. It doesn't have to be long. And I would just close my eyes and actually visualize the outcome of that meeting. It's almost like 10 out of 10 that it comes out exactly the way I want it to come. And again, not because I'm some special person, but it's the way that I create my outcome. We create our outcome. Right, Cortney? We create our surroundings. We create our possibilities.
Yes, and your intention is creating. Yeah, sorry, I missed that last bit. What did you say?
We hold the key.
Yes, absolutely. And you just pointed out once again another really important element, which is your intention. So your intention will almost always determine your outcome, and it's just your awareness of your intention, the predominant intention that you're holding. Because again, if someone's just, I joke, it's not about standing in front of a mirror and saying, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, right? It's not, it doesn't really work that way. It works in the sense of, okay, what's my predominant intention? What's my predominant belief? What is guiding it? And you don't have to always be there. I think that's an important thing too, that people are worried, okay, I can't entertain this other thing. Otherwise it's going to go bad. It's going to go awry. And the reality of it is really about tipping the scales, right? So if you're seeing a result in your life or your business that you're not that keen on, that's an indicator right there. That's an indicator where you can stop and look at that and say, okay, well, what would I like? What would I like to see? And then you can start to get really intentional about it. Just like you said before going to a meeting. I mean, before I do anything of any significance, I set an intention. In the very same way, I set an intention. And I think it's important to recognize, especially for people who aren't that used to doing this yet, it is a practice. And you don't have to, you're not going to learn it maybe straight away. I mean, you're not necessarily, it's not going to be 10 out of 10, like you said, straight away, but it will become 10 out of 10 the more you practice it and the more you become aware of what's my intention here. What is really behind, what's really guiding my behaviors, what's really guiding my desire. And the closer you can get to the truth of that, the easier it's going to be for it to come into being without all that much effort, if that makes sense.
Of course. I mean, we, just like I said with the gym, it's very hard in the beginning until you get used to it. But then once you go, it's a habit. You don't even think about it anymore. You wake up in the morning, you put your shoes on and you go to the gym. And the same with this. Of course, as I said, it was very hard for me in the beginning to do this, especially that nobody taught me. I had no idea this world of endless possibilities exists. I didn't know about this. I mean, I come from Romania where we didn't even have television. We didn't have absolutely anything. And for me to even have this thought was so amazing. I'm so thankful. I am so thankful that I found the way. And I don't know if I was meant to, but that's why I have you and other people in my life who really are helping me to find myself even more and find out what else is out there. Because if I was able to go from nothing to where I am right now, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And again, I'm not Jeff Bezos, but for me, I am where I want to be right now. And being able to put my son in private school if I want to, or if I want to come to Italy and visit you, I can do that. And for me, that is a huge, huge accomplishment.
Yes. And I think it's really important to note in that what you were talking about in terms of the gym. I think that's a great comparison, because these are muscles that we're talking about that you can learn, you can train, you can learn to operate differently. And I talk about the body and the mind like that. They're operating systems, and so they're the most magnificent operating systems ever created. And so the more you learn about them and the more you practice. But I think what's really important to note is, one of the things I always say is, it's actually, I think, a quote from Warren Buffett is, don't test the depths of the water with both feet. In other words, you don't have to just jump in and assume that, you've got to just go for it. And every day you're going to be training your mind now and everything is going to be immediately, rainbows and unicorns. I think it's really important for people to realize that there's a lot of power in just taking little, just bite-sized practices in terms of getting used to using your imagination, getting used to learn how to direct your thoughts differently, how to direct your mind and your body minds as well differently, which is something we can get into if you want. But I think it's important for people to realize that, because otherwise we fall into this trap that we should be there by now. And that's what a lot of people, I fear, struggle with. And I think that's where a lot of their confidence sort of goes down the drain is, oh, I should already know how to do that, or I should already be doing this, or look at this person. And, we're stuck a lot of times in this comparison, but comparison is it's super futile. I remember once someone saying to me, oh, the sin of comparison. And I thought, oh, that's perfect, because to sin actually means to miss the mark. And there's truly no greater missing of the mark than to think that to compare ourselves as a means of saying, oh, I should be that. It's one thing, as you said earlier, to say, to be inspired and to allow someone else's experience and someone else's wisdom to shine a light on our potential. But it's quite another to be stuck in this, oh, look where that person is or this person is. And just keeping in mind that person was also where you were. So if, you want to be doing what you're doing, for example, if someone out there listening says, oh gosh, I really wish I could be just like Izabella. Well, Izabella wasn't Izabella, however many years ago. I wasn't who I am by any means, and I'm still figuring that out. Just like you said, I mean, we're still very much walking the talk of, oh, there's more, and that means there's more of you. There's more of you to shine through, and uncovering that bit by bit.
I love that so much, Brittany. Yeah. So, going on this, thought of, being able to bring prosperity into your life and how connected it is with confidence. To me, like you said, it's still a daily practice that I do. And, I'm not there yet. And I do have bad days and sometimes bad months. And, we talked about this before, like last month, I thought the world was ending. And, I was just in such a low vibration, as I call it, very low vibration energy. But when I look at what exactly happened, it was me doing it, because I kind of fell into a downward spiral. So first is like, I wasn't able to do this. And then that took me to like, you're not good at anything and you don't deserve to have anything, which took me even lower to who knows God what. And, that put me into this, like bad energy, like almost like depression. And I know that's such a harsh word, because it's not really depression that I felt. It was just like I was feeling down and low. And this will happen a lot in people's lives. Like, it doesn't matter how much you think you made it, this will come out of nowhere. And if you feed that thought, if you keep feeding that negative, it will take you to depths that you have not seen. So it's very important to catch yourself in those moments of negativity and turn it around. And it's one of the hardest things to do, because we're so used to feeding those negative thoughts that it feels like home. It feels like, okay, this sucks, but it feels good. It's so weird. It's like when you're really sore from the gym and you get a massage and it hurts, but it feels good. Like, that's the only thing I can explain it. It's, we're in that and we're crying and we're sad and it feels comforting and it feels normal, but then we're like, oh my God, I'm a terrible mom, or I'm a terrible this. And we keep feeding that thought to who knows what. So, and it's very hard to get out of it the deeper you go. So it's what I'm teaching myself to do is, whenever I feel these thoughts and whenever I feel those negative vibrations, I try to come up with maybe a list of the things that are positive in my life. I am here. I do have, a healthy family. My parents live next door to me, and they're amazing. They take care of my son when I go on trips. And, just having a good life it's what brings me back to reality. And, you can start with anything. Like, thank God I'm healthy. Thank God I have a home. Thank God I have a car to go to work, even though my work sucks, or however you can. But just having those positive reinforcements really help.
Yeah. And I think it can be, and for anyone listening, and especially right now, because right now we're in such a wild time, right? Where it's not just what you've got going on, it's what's going on worldwide and how things are changing and how things are even from one moment to the next changing. I mean, think about the idea of a lockdown. I mean, who would have ever thought that from one day to the next that we could actually be completely locked down, unable to go anywhere, unable to travel, unable to see our loved ones. So if you're in that state, and it's very normal and natural, and that if you're in a state of anxiety, you're in a state of fear, you're in a state of anything. One of the things I counsel is just take a time out. It's and don't make it wrong, for yourself that you're feeling that, because it's perfectly right that we can feel that. The question is, like you said, how long do we want to stay in that? How long do we want to swim around in that swamp? And sometimes we might need to be in there for who knows whatever reason. So it's not about making it wrong or whatever, but to spend your time in there. I think when it becomes dangerous is, like you said, when it starts feeling like home, when it starts feeling like the safe place, and where you actually use it kind of maybe as an excuse to not step into your full potential. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard that quote. I love that quote it's been attributed to Marianne Williamson, but also I believe Nelson Mandela. Anyway, the idea is that your greatest fear is not that you're inadequate. Your greatest fear is that you're powerful beyond measure. And so oftentimes what I see of when people are in that swampy place is, I just want to kind of not see what my potential, I just kind of want to stay in this comfort zone area because I know it, and I know how to navigate these waters. I'm not digging them all that much, but I know how to get around here. Whereas over there, that's total unknown. And I feel like this year actually has been a full invitation into the unknown. It has been a full invitation into, we don't know, minute by minute, day by day, hour by hour, we don't know. And that's frightening for most people. So if you're feeling frightened by that, totally normal, totally cool. Yet what you're saying, Izabella, is very powerful as well. Is once you've given yourself the space that you need in there, there's this light that you can turn on. I liken it sometimes to, like, when a child is scared of, monsters in the room and in the closet or whatever, and you turn on the light and all of a sudden they can see, okay, well, it's fine, I'm safe. So what you're talking about is a little bit this opportunity to turn on a light, to turn on the switch that says, I'm okay, I'm safe, I have a home, I have a family, whatever it is that you have that you can feel grateful for right now, to just start to calm your autonomic nervous system by sending those messages in, taking some deep breaths. That's another thing that I'm seeing a lot of, and I've seen it for years, but I'm seeing a heightened difficulty with it around the world, which is just a lot of people in apnea. So a lot of people just not breathing fully. And, we can go without a lot of things, but we can't go without our breath for very long. Okay. It's the one thing that we really can't deprive ourselves of for too long. But with the masks we're wearing and everything else, there is this, we are getting less vital life force energy. We're getting less oxygen, and for a lot of people, and a lot of people aren't taking those timeouts. I often, I mentioned a few minutes ago that it's a little bit like, again, with a child. I don't know why I keep going back to a child today, but it's this idea that we have to give ourselves those timeouts sometimes and just say, okay, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm breathing, I'm going to breathe through this. And maybe there's even this little light that I'm going to start flicking on to remind myself that it's going to be okay.
So good. I love every time I listen to you. It's almost like you're reminding me of something that maybe I knew from before, but it's like when you read a book or you see a movie, you're like, oh, I knew that was gonna happen. It's just like a thought, like we're waking up to what we are, because all of us have this power within us. And not just me, because I'm Izabella. I'm really nobody. Like I am nobody. To me, I am everything. But we are all so unique. So if you're home listening and saying, I don't think I can do this, I don't think I can do this Amazon thing, or I don't think I can write that book that I've been wanting to write. Like, this is your story. This is your movie. You are the hero in your movie. You are the main character, and everybody's watching you. So I start my days thinking this whole thing is all about me. Okay. It sounds conceited, but it's like I created this like movie around my life, and every day I have to show up and perform, and I have to do it for myself. And I think if we simplify our life a little bit more and not make it so complex, a lot of people think, well, like you mentioned, oh, I'm 30 years old, or I'm 40, or I'm 50, and I haven't done anything with my life, and, my life sucks, and it's already too late for me. It's really never too late. I mean, if you look in history, you see all these people who have become successful at whatever age. Do you think they did not have the thoughts that you did? They all did. I don't care if it's Warren Buffett. I don't care if it's Jeff Bezos or anyone. They're human. Okay. One thing I know for sure, even though I've never met them, they are human. And if they're human, they went through some shit that I went through. That's what I know. Okay. So if they were able to do it, they were able to get successful, to be where they are right now, that means I can do it. Why can I not do it? I have a full brain. I am thankful that God created me like healthy and gave me eyes to see and ears to hear. That's all you need. That's really all you need to do anything in life. And I think once we learn that we are responsible for our actions and for our outcomes, there's nothing greater than that out there. There's no better gift in the world that anybody can give me than knowing that I can get it myself.
Yeah. Oh my God. And I want to unpack that again, because there were so many little gold nuggets in there, but I want to take one in particular, because you said, why not me? If he did it, how come I can? Why not? In the sense of, yeah, I can, but you see the power is in the question. And what a lot of people don't understand is that our brains are basically question answer systems. They're like a search engine, only infinitely more powerful. And so the questions you're asking are actually determining a lot of the results that you're seeing. And so when people start to learn that, you're just asking different questions in different areas of your life. And just to give a little bit of science behind this, there's a part of your brain that's actually responsible for this. It's called the reticular activating system. And what it does is it actually finds answers to the questions or to kind of what you're looking for. Okay. It finds what you're looking for. That's its job. So we're being exposed to trillions of data, sometimes even per second, right? So our brain can't process consciously all of that. So what our brain says is, oh, this thing is important to Izabella. Let me grab that thing out of the ethers. Let me show her that it's right there. Okay. I'm sure you've been exposed to this. You and I have even talked about this in our sessions, but one example that I always give is when I started years and years ago, I was working for the North Face, and I just all of a sudden I started seeing North Face jackets everywhere. Now, it wasn't that people weren't wearing the North Face before. It was that my brain, this part of my brain that's responsible for this, was looking for them. So you've seen this probably when you get a new car or anything else where you can see that your brain is actually searching. It is a search engine. So again, you are asking yourself some really powerful questions. And like you said, that doesn't necessarily make you special, although you are very special. Like I said, we're all very, but you found a lot of answers. But what it makes you is aware. It makes you the director, because you also said something else really, really beautiful, which is like, this is your movie. You're the star. What do you want to see happen? And I think there's another step in there, because, well, The Truman Show is like, it's one of my favorite movies. I absolutely adore Jim Carrey. And I love the idea that, yes, we are kind of we're at the center, right, of our world. I mean, wherever we go, we are, right? So as individuals. But what's even more interesting to entertain is the idea that not only are you the main actor or the main actress, you are also the director. You're the whole show. You're the whole show. So when you start to notice that, you start to know that, you start to like get, that creepy feeling. You and I were talking momentarily about this a little bit before we started this podcast today, and hopefully we'll go into that in a subsequent episode. But when you start to realize you're the whole gamut, then really that field of potential, that field of potentiality of infinite potential outcomes is right in front of you, and you start to actually just become much more mindful and much more aware of what you choose and the kinds of questions you ask and the ways in which you're directing your mind, the ways in which you're directing your movie.
I love that. And, talking about this, it makes me think of why a lot of people don't do this. And I know there's a lot of people that agree with what we're talking about. They agree, they know it's true, but at the same time, it's almost like they don't want it to be true, because then they would have to put in some work. So what I noticed, like, with family members even, or friends, very close friends, they know we talk about this all the time. This is literally my favorite subject, and which is why, I'm so like excited to talk about this, because it's really the secret sauce to life. And I talk to them, and I know they get it. I know they understand what I'm saying. And even though they do, they kind of want to forget about it, because it's easier to just kind of blame everyone else. So like, I went to work and, I got laid off for whatever reason. And, they never liked me anyway. And I think, they just let me go because, they just didn't like me. Okay. And, or they can say, oh, I'm just really bad at this or whatever. And we are letting the autopilot kind of do the work for us. And trust me, it's so much easier to do that. It's so much easier to sit at home and cry and say, oh my God, they hated me, and so that's why they laid me off. And, they're just terrible people, and maybe I'll have better luck with the next job. No, as soon as something happens to you, just examine it, look at it. What is it that happened? Was I not the right person for that job? Was I not supposed to be in that job? If I wasn't, what is this supposed to tell me? So one thing that I cope with when bad things happen, let's say bad things, nothing is really bad. It's just what is, right? It's just a sequence of events in our life. And, you get to the point where something unpleasant happens, like maybe getting laid off a job. What I do in that situation is like, okay, this sucks. I just lost my income, whatever. It sucks really bad. But why did this happen? What is it in my life that needed to happen for me to take action? So in that moment, you have two choices. You can grow and become what you exactly been wanting your whole life to become, or you can go and get the same job again and repeat that cycle over and over and over and over again. It's just like somebody being in a relationship with an abuser, let's say. They keep staying in that relationship, and, something happens. Maybe that guy finally leaves, let's say, if it's a girl and guy relationship. And then, you see that same girl repeating the same pattern, going into a relationship with exactly the same character, another abuser. And then they keep going through this until one day when they're like, what is it that I am doing to attract this kind of person in my life? So it goes with really anything in your life. It can be relationship, it can be business, it can be family, anything. If we keep repeating the same mistakes, we will do that for the rest of our life until we die, until we decide to learn what that lesson is. And I know maybe for some of you, it sounds like mambo jumbo, what we're talking about, but this has been so true and so valid in my life that I have to share this with you because we do have the absolute power to change our outcome in our life. It all depends on how you tell your story, how you take what happened to you and what are you going to do with it. And, when you sit at home and say, I really would love to have my own boat. And when you put that into the universe, you already have the thought and the feeling together. You're thinking, I'm going to have a boat. Life from that moment, it will change. So expect changes in your life. You cannot just say, I want to have a boat and chill back and nothing to change for you to get that boat. Some things will happen. You may lose your job. You may lose 10 friends. You may lose all this. And you're thinking, what the hell? This is not the life that I wanted. I wanted to have a boat. Well, guess what? When you put out in the universe such a big wish and you attach your feeling to it, some things are going to start happening in your life for you to get to that point. You may not see the picture until that one day when you're like, holy cow, now I get it, what had to happen for me to get this boat. But a lot of us quit in the middle of the process. We want something and then we're like, well, I kind of want this, but not really. It's cool if I don't. And then you're giving the universe or God or whoever is your higher power, you're giving mixed signals. It's like, well, this person doesn't know what they want. So let me put them back in the back seat until they decide what they need to do in their life. And I think it's such a brilliant concept. If we only look within ourselves and see what have we been doing? Because if you think about it, everything you've ever wanted in your life, you have it in this very moment. If you're sitting at home right now watching and thinking, okay, I wanted to move to San Francisco my whole life, and oh my God, I am here in San Francisco. Everything that you thought of in your life, whether it's small or big, usually people are afraid to make big wishes, but every single thing that was small, I can guarantee you it is exactly where you decided to be right now in this moment.
Yeah, and people are reluctant to assume that responsibility, I think, for very obvious reasons, because then they have to face the fact that they are the creator.
It's a powerful thing.
And that is a frightening realization. That is a frightening realization. But what you're talking about essentially is, you have capital to spend every day. I mean, this is one of the best ways I ever heard of, because you were talking about it also being mumbo jumbo. So let's bring a little bit of science in so people can start to understand what's actually happening, right? What's actually happening within your mind, what's actually happening within your body, right? So you have this really awesome neural-circuitry up here. You've got at least 100 billion neurons. In between them, there are more connections than there are stars in the known universe, right? And between those, you're making these connections, these synapses, right? You're running these highways, these super highways, right? Within your mind all the time. So things that you know how to do that you're kind of autopilot, or conditions within your life or circumstances in your life, those are literally, you've just been running that pathway for a really long time. So it's really enforced and it's really easy and it's really second nature. So when you see a result and you think, oh, it's just like that. And I don't know how many times I hear people say, oh, it's just how it is. 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 Again, you're brainwashing. Well, really what you're doing is you're just reestablishing, you're following that code. You're following that code. So what is required is this interrupt, right? This interruption, this, okay, I'm going to break from that. I'm going to start over here. But the other really important thing that you talked about is people give up at a certain point. And I once heard of this as the U shape of all creative endeavors, which I really liked the idea of, which is, you start over here and on this other side is your vision. So what you think is possible for you. And you start the descent into this U. In other words, you start taking some actions and you start doing some little things. And when you get down here, deep in this U, you can't see your vision anymore. You're covered in muck and dirt and all that. And you can't see it. So what happens is most people, most of the time, they're giving up right about here, right when they start to just lose contact with that vision and think it's totally impossible. And so they're setting another vision here and they start to it's just this downward trajectory. Whereas people who have learned that you've just got to get through that mucky part, you've just got to get through that part that doesn't feel so good, and you will start the ascent and you will see your vision there. But it takes those steps that are just really uncomfortable. And I think Danny was saying at the beginning of this, he showed up every day. He didn't want to, but he did, and look at what he's created. So there is all of that. And there's also the moments of high and also the moments where you're kind of instantaneously getting there. And I talk about that a lot when I talk about the different brainwave frequencies you can access and all of that. But just so that there is this, you are kind of running on code. And so you can start to insert different code. And as you start to do it, is like, if you trickle it in a little bit at a time, what happens is you trick your brain into a different pattern. You trick your brain to take a different route. And you don't need a lot of practice at this necessarily. You just need consistency more than anything. What I like to liken it to is compound interest. So mostly we hear about this in financial terms, but it applies across the board. I believe it was Einstein who called it the eighth wonder of the universe. And if you look at it in terms of money and the way money builds on itself, right? So an example that I give is a penny, right? If I give you a penny today and I tell you it will double the value of that every day for a month. So day 2, you've got 2, day 3, you've got 4, 8, 16, et cetera. And I'll do that for 1 month, or I'll give you $2.5, euros, whatever your currency is right now. A lot of people, they go for the 2.5, but unless you're a magnificent investor, or unless you got a bad month, which was February, the day you hit 29, you've already moved over the 2.5 mark. Day 30, you've moved over 5 million, and day 31, you moved over 10. So that's the way compound interest works. It's like all of a sudden, it looks like nothing. You're going to the gym, you don't see results, you give up, or you keep on just going. And again, you don't need so much. And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up. They think they kind of have to revolutionize their lives. You don't. You can spend a few minutes just imaging in. You can spend a few moments really connecting to a vision and having the curiosity to do that. And it will start to, like you said, it'll start to slowly change things. And the other piece that I want to bring in is just your body, just understanding that, you are also dealing with, if your body's not in a state, in the state to be able to accept a lot of this different messaging, there's work to be done there. So it's funny that we're talking about the gym. We brought that up a few times, is just realizing that, you might need to quickly shift your state, whether that means going for a walk before you start working on some of this, what we're talking about today, or just getting a few deep breaths in to just start changing things that are happening to you on a physical level as well, so that you're more able to accept some of this new messaging, some of this new code.
Thank you, Cortney, for that. I know we wanted to talk about so much today. And one thing that I did want to bring up is your wonderful book that I have here, Change Starts Within You. And it's very small, but very, very powerful. And I know we don't have much time left, but could you tell our listeners just maybe one little thing from the book that for those that have not read it, they could take home with them?
Yeah, well, actually, I just did the first exercise, one of the really powerful exercises in the book. We just put that into our first podcast. My dear friend Valentina Hernandez and I launched our podcast, and it's actually going live today. It's called The Superhero in You. And they're episodes that are under 20 minutes. And we just want to give these exactly what you're talking about, something tangible for you to do right now. That's really easy. So I think you definitely want to check that episode out. Again, the podcast name is The Superhero in You. You'll find the first podcast as of today. It should already be live. And so, so that's a great place to get started. And I think the book also can really help anyone in terms of very simple practices that they can use right now to start, again, moving through some of that muck that they might be facing and able to sort of move into. And I know we don't have that much time left. If you want, I can try to get into one of them, but I just want to be mindful of the time and definitely direct someone to something, 15 minutes, I think, for that first episode. And you can do one of the exercises that I think is personally very, very powerful. It was very powerful for me when I did it.
Awesome. Maybe you can give us the link and I'll post it in the comments here so people can check it out. But would you let us know how, for those that want to reach out to you, how they can find you, your website, or maybe they want to ask any additional questions from our talk today?
Absolutely. So my website is Cort, C-O-R-T. So there's no U in my name. So it's C-O-R-T-I-N-C. So Cort Inc. and there you can find some resources, the blog. You can reach out to my team, who will definitely put you in contact if we need to talk directly, which would be lovely. I'd love to connect with some of your listeners, and that's probably the best way to reach me. I am available at Cortney McDermott at different handles, but yeah, I think probably the website might be a good place to start, especially if you're looking for some more resources and things. And there's also a 7-minute meditation that you can download for free right there, and it just helps you calm your autonomic nervous system, especially in times like these. It's a powerful resource also to help you tap into more of your own confidence. So yeah.
Awesome. Cortney, you are such a pleasure to be around. And I always look forward to our talks because I feel like we get into some subjects that are just so beyond, unbelievable and beautiful. And it just like resets. It resets me usually for the week. And I want to thank you for sharing your wisdom with all of us today. You have been magnificent, and I truly love you.
Thank you. I love you so much too. I'm so proud of you. This was beautiful. Thank you everyone for listening, and I hope to catch you again soon.
Thank you. And we will see you next week, guys.
Ciao.